Hello, everybody. Hello,
Hey.
Viola.
Hi, Gene.
We're waiting for a bunch of people. All right.
Hey, Gene.
We do. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, Gene, are we taping this?
Viola, we taping this?
Yes, I am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Lee, are you on, Lee? You're on?
Here.
Great. How do you sound, Lee? You sound good?
I think I sound good.
A slightly echoey, but good.
Really?
A little echoey.
Is that a little better?
That is better.
I'll stay
Guys,
nice and tight.
no, that's great. So give us a few minutes. Lee, you're going to have a couple of hundred people on here from all over the United States, India, and the Philippines,
I love it.
right? Let's give these guys a few minutes. How many people do we have? 154. Viola, we did invite everyone, India, the Philippines, all over the United States.
Yes, everyone on email.
All right. All right. Hey, Melanie.
Hi, Gene.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
All right. Give the guys a few more minutes.
You look comfortable, Gene.
Yeah.
Been a rough day.
Thanks for all the work you did.
What's that? You talking to me?
No, with Jeff, all the work he did for Super Bowl.
Oh, that's great. No, big participation. That was great.
We have 74. Thank you. But I love it. So it's great. It'll be more fun on Sunday when I start telling everybody who won. But we have 74. We have 74 players, $4,500 up for grabs. I'm hoping we have 30, 40 winners. That would be phenomenal. So a lot of enthusiasm behind this. It was great. It was great to do. And everybody paid. I don't have to send Rocco out to anybody's doorstep.
I threatened them, Jeff.
Thanks, Gene.
All right. Steve Ryerson, are you on? Steve Ryerson, I know I just got off with him. Steve Ryerson, you on? Maybe not. All right, where are we at? 166? All right, why don't we start, right? Whoever's late can jump in a little bit. I did want, guys, hold on one second. I wanted to introduce you to Lee Rubin. Quickly, Lee is Rob Williams knows Lee, has worked with him in the past. Actually, was one of Rob's clients at a certain time. And Rob came to me and said, "Gene, Lee's a great guy. He's a Penn State grad football player. Is now a motivational speaker in things like team building and salesmanship. He's excellent. He actually has about 10 years, I may be wrong, 10 years of experience in staffing when he worked for clients, hiring salespeople. So he knows our industry. He knows what staffing's about. And we thought we'd spend, maybe an hour doing a presentation, 30, 40 minutes of presentation, 20 minutes of questions. I encourage you guys to ask questions. I'd like him to make his presentation, then we can talk. But guys, this is it. We're now in, believe it or not, a 12th of 2021 is over. We really need to make things happen these next 2 months to make a great 2021 and then to continue to grow. So we thought this would be a great kickoff. We'll try to do more of this during the year, and we all need, kind of new ideas and motivation and thinking through new ways of doing things. So again, Lee, I'm going to introduce Lee Rubin to you. Lee, go ahead.
Gene, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Can everyone hear me okay? Sounds okay?
Yep.
Awesome. So let me just fill in a couple gaps for you in terms of my background so you know a little bit more about me and the perspective that I come from as it relates to leadership and team building. As Gene mentioned, I'm a former student athlete, was a captain of the Penn State football team back in the early 90s. I'm a Jersey guy. I think that's important. Was a 3-year starter captain, did not play professionally. I did what most student athletes do after college. I went directly into corporate America. And that's where I spent actually 15 years in the staffing world, HR experience with companies like Merrill Lynch, Johnson & Johnson, Price Waterhouse Coopers, primarily on the sales side. So recruiting salespeople. And I just believe that as a recruiter of salespeople, you become a salesperson. So I'm pretty familiar with your role and what you guys do. So did that for 15 years, left that world about 10 years ago to do the speaking thing. So I'm a full-time keynote speaker. Prior to COVID and the global pandemic, I traveled all over the country, all over the world, speaking to corporations, professional associations, and athletic teams. So that's my professional background. Personally, which I think is just as or more important, I've been married to a lovely, gorgeous woman for 25 years. Yeah, I will take applause for that. Yeah, thank you.
Hey, congratulations.
Yeah, 25 years is a long time. We have 2 absolutely gorgeous daughters, which in my opinion, absolutely sucks. Because in my experience, beautiful daughters attract ugly boys. And I've spent most of my adult life threatening bodily harm on ugly boys. So that's a little bit about me. As you can tell, I hope in the first 2 minutes, I like to have a good time. I realize it's been a long day. It's the end of the day for those in the US, at the end of hump day at that. So we're going to keep this very conversational, very engaging. But what I want to share is very relevant, very pertinent, and I'm confident it's going to be very valuable to you. I want to talk about what it takes to be an extraordinary team. The title of my talk is 5 Components of Extraordinary Teams. And to make the components really, really easy to remember, they all start with the letter C, okay? So this talk has become affectionately known as the 5 C's. Now, before I get into the 5 C's, I've got 2 requests, 2 favors I want to ask of you, all right? So here's the first one. I want you to listen with both ears. Here's what I mean. I want you to hear me not just from a professional point of view, but also from a personal point of view. I don't want you to hear how this might help you become a better leader, a better employee, a better recruiter, a better relationship builder from a professional perspective. I also want you to hear me personally, because the reality is we're parts of teams outside of work, right? Our family is a team. Our community is a team. Our faith community is a team. And so the principles that I share are going to benefit you across the board. Okay, so the first favor is listen with both ears. The second favor I'll ask of you is to repeat some things, is to talk back to me, right? I'm not going to flash any PowerPoint slides. I'm not going to ask you to go in little breakout rooms on Zoom. No, I want this to be conversational. So I'm going to ask you to just repeat some things and keep this very conversational, to talk back to me. Now, I know that you're muted and I can't hear you, but the purpose of me asking you to speak is because I've learned that the more ways you engage an idea, whether it's seeing me and hearing me or writing what I say, and also speaking the things that I ask you to repeat, it's going to help us remember those things, because we don't want to waste today. We don't want to have a good time today and not remember the things that we've talked about. All right. So there were 2 favors. One is to listen with both ears. And number 2, just talk back to me and repeat some of the things that I ask you to share. Awesome. Now, again, before I get into the 5 C's, I have to share this philosophy. Typically, I don't tell people what to write down, but if you are taking notes, this would be a good place to grab your pen and paper. I'll repeat this idea multiple times because I've got to make sure that we get this. Okay, here we go. Teams exist because there's a challenge or an opportunity that's too big for one person to handle alone. Teams exist. The only reason the team exists is because there's a challenge or an opportunity that's too big for one person to handle by themselves, to handle alone. One more time, just to make sure we've got this. Teams exist because there's when I pause, I'm gonna, help me out. Teams exist because there's a challenge or
An opportunity.
opportunity that's too big
Too
for
big
any
for
one of us
one
to
person.
handle by ourselves. Ladies and gentlemen, right up front, if you could do this by yourself, you wouldn't need a team. The reality is the work we're trying to do, the dent we're trying to make, the value we're trying to add is more than any one of us can do alone. We really do need each other. And that has to be our foundation. That's got to be our starting point. We can't just put on our cape, be a superhero, and get this all done by ourselves. The reality is everyone on this team, we are connected to each other. We are dependent on each other. In fact, the better word, we are interdependent on each other. and that's really important. The implications of that idea are really important. And here's why. Because when I understand that I can't be successful unless you're successful, it changes the nature of our relationships. Yeah, when I understand that I'm a part of something bigger than myself and I need you for us to be successful and achieve the thing that I cannot achieve by ourselves, it changes how we deal with each other. It changes how we treat each other. So that's foundational. It's fundamental to being a successful team. We've got to understand that we're all in this together. Now might be a good time to cue in like we are the world, right? But no, seriously, like we really do need each other. And I think that understanding is critical right up front. Okay. Now I'll try to get through my comments in about 35, 40 minutes and then leave some time for Q&A. So if you have any questions, just jot them down so you don't forget. All right. But let me get through the prepared statement, the comments, and then we'll get to it. So now let's talk about these 5 components. Here's the first one. Extraordinary teams are comprised of competitors. Extraordinary teams are comprised of competitors. Could you repeat that for me? Extraordinary teams are comprised of
competitors.
Competitors. Yeah, my grandmother told me something once before she passed away. She said, baby, it's not the size of the dog in the fight. It's the size of the fight in the dog. Does that make sense? I see some heads nodding. That sound familiar? Your grandmother told you the same thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's see, too often we're concerned about the measurables, right? The years of experience, the academic background, the things, the tangibles, the things we can measure. What I've learned is if you're talking about being a part of an extraordinary team, you got to have some people with some fight in the dog. So I'm a big definition guy. I love definitions. So I looked up what it means to be a competitor. Here's how the dictionary defines a competitor. Dictionary says a competitor is an individual who strives with another individual or group, and they're striving for the same goal. They both want the same thing. I get that, Webster, but that definition doesn't do it for me because that's not what I think of when I think of a competitor. Let me tell you my definition of a competitor. A competitor is an individual who loves to win and hates to lose. I see heads nodding. Doesn't that feel better than Webster's wimpy definition? Yeah, a competitor is an individual who loves to win and hates to lose. In fact, could you repeat that for me? A competitor is an individual who what?
Loves to win.
No. You have to say it the way I said it. Let's try that again.
Loves to win.
Yes.
Hates to lose.
I love getting adults to do that. It's silly, but it's silly on purpose. Here's the point. It's about passion. It's about passion. The most successful people in the world are passionate about what they do. I don't care if it's sports, music, art, business, faith, family, it doesn't matter. They're passionate about what they do. And it is that passion that drives us to action. See, if you're not passionate about what you do and the success of your team, you'll quit when things get tough. See, if you're not passionate about what you do, you'll look for shortcuts and detours when things become monotonous or we get hit with a pandemic that disrupts our business operations. No, when you're passionate about what you do, you find a way to be your absolute best. I'm not as concerned about the measurables as I am with starting with people who care enough to be their absolute best. We got to have passionate people. We have to have competitors. Now, let me be clear. When I talk about winning and losing, I've got to define that. I've got to be clear about that because it's changed for me over the years. And growing up, winning meant I beat you, right? I scored more points than you. I pinned you. I ran faster than you. I scored higher than you. I made more money than you. That's what I thought winning was. Let me tell you what I think winning is now, because my perspective has evolved, I would say. So winning for me now is, as a team, we have met or exceeded what we're capable of. As a team, we have met or exceeded what we are capable of. So guess what losing is? Anything short of that. Anything short of what we as a team are capable of is unacceptable. See, again, it's no longer this relative idea that I'm better than you, that we're the best firm. It's this, like, I don't get it. And that really doesn't say much because, quite frankly, the teams that we're better than may suck. It doesn't mean anything. Yeah. So for me, winning means we have met or exceeded what we're capable of. And competitors are driven to close the gap between where they currently are and what they're capable of. Yeah, competitors are driven to close the gap between where they currently are and what they're capable of, even if where they currently are is better than everyone else. Ladies and gentlemen, my first challenge to you is to close this gap. Don't tell me about how great you are. Don't tell me about how much better we're doing than everyone else. This gap should bother you. This gap should haunt you. You should be perpetually driven to be your absolute best. And that's what I mean by starting with a bunch of competitors. I get the sense that you are, but just needed to make that clear right up front. All right. 5 components. They all start with the letter
E.
C. First one, extraordinary teams are comprised of
Competitors.
Love it. Here's the second component. Extraordinary teams have a common goal. Extraordinary teams have a common goal. Could you repeat that for me? Extraordinary teams have a
Common goal.
crazy question for you guys, and a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer this out loud. Maybe you shake your head if you want, but here's the question. If I were to ask each one of you individually to come into my office and tell me what the common goal of this team is, would I get the same exact answer from everyone on the team?
No.
Well, there's an answer. Yeah, see, it's going to be hard. See, again, the reason a team exists is because we're all trying to do something that none of us could do by ourselves. We're all trying to achieve one single common goal. We may have different roles and responsibilities, but ultimately everything we do is contributing to the completion or the fulfillment of one single common goal. So it's critical that we understand what that goal is and that we're all on the same page. But let's say the answer to that question was yes, like we're all on the same page. We know it. We recite it every morning. We're not allowed in the building or on a call unless we tell everyone what our common goal is. So that would be wonderful. We've got another hurdle to cross, to get over. It's a bigger one, I think. Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest hurdle to achieving a common goal is the reality that on every team, there's always someone who's looking out for themselves. Yeah, whether it's a team of 2, like a marriage, at some point, they're looking out for themselves, or a team of 20,000 corporate employees. There's always someone at some point who's looking out for themselves. They want to do what's best for them. But I've got to be clear right up front. The only way to achieve a common goal is everyone on the team at some level is going to have to be willing to make a sacrifice. We've got to give up something individually that we want in order to achieve something that we all want. That's the reason you're a part of a team in the first place. Yeah, it's the reason we join a team, is because we can't do it by ourselves. I've learned that the worst type of selfishness in the world is to join a team to benefit from your participation on that team, but when the team needs you, not be willing to make a sacrifice. So the question I have to ask is, what are you willing to sacrifice for the benefit of your team? What are you willing to give up that may be beneficial to you individually, but may keep us from getting and achieving our common goal? That's the question I want us all to ask ourselves, not now, but maybe jot down the question to think about it. But the best teams I've been around, the extraordinary teams I've been around, the individuals are willing to give up what they want individually in order to achieve something that everyone wants. It's the reason they joined the team in the first place. Now, I've been doing this long enough, and I know where we are in the world. I know where we are in our society at this point in history to understand we've all been making tremendous sacrifices already. And so I get that look, right? Dude, do not ask me to make another sacrifice. In fact, me being on this call, listening to you right now is a sacrifice. So we're good. And I get it. Like, we don't have bandwidth to do a whole lot more, but if you would, I'd like to propose a sacrifice that really kind of crosses all industries, all levels of leadership. It's a sacrifice that I think we should all examine, because it may be the one that pushes us to the next level in our development and our growth. And the best way for me to do this is to tell you a quick story. So my wife is teaching my daughter, who's 4 years old at the time, how to cook a roast, right? Many of us learned, right, just from observation. We watched our parents or grandparents, we watched them do what they do, and we just kind of pick things up. So my wife is making a roast, and she cuts the roast in half, puts the two pieces in separate pans, and puts both pans in the oven. And so my 4-year-old does what 4-year-olds do. She asks mommy, why? Why, mommy? Why'd you do that? So mommy's answer is, well, that's the way my mother did it. Now, I'll try to say this without getting myself in trouble, because I do realize we're recording this. I'll do it with a straight face so you don't see the pain that I feel when I say this. My mother-in-law was living with us at the time. How did I do? Could you feel it? So she asks grandma, she says, Grandma, why do you cut the roast in half, put them in separate pans, and put both pans in the oven? Grandma's answer is, well, that's the way my mom did it. Now, fortunately, great grandma was still alive. And even more fortunately, she was not living with us. So she calls great grandma. She says, great grandma, why do you cut the roast in half, put them in separate pans, put both pans in the oven? And guess what great grandma's answer is? Nope. Here's what great grandma says.
My oven was too small.
Yeah, are those dummies still doing that? She goes, sweetie, the only reason I did it is because I didn't have a pan big enough for the roast. Silly, goofy even. But there's a point here, ladies and gentlemen. Often, the reason that we do what we do now, no, let me repeat that. Often the only reason we do what we do now is because that's the way we've always done it. Yeah, and sometimes we need to pause and be 4-year-olds and simply ask the question, why? Is this the best way to do it? Is this the most efficient way to do it? Are there some technologies or some methodologies or just some different mindsets that will help me get to where it is we're trying to go faster? So I may not be asking you to do more. I may actually be asking you to do less by letting go of some of the things we've always done, if the only reason we're doing it that way is because that's the way we've always done it. Now, I'm not sure what the sacrifice is for you. I do know you'll need to make a sacrifice for us to achieve a common goal, but one that I'd like to suggest is just being a 4-year-old. And just asking, as you do things, as we look at our processes and our behaviors and our approaches and our mentalities, is this the best way to get it done? Okay, cool. 5 components. They all start with the letter E. Stay with me. First one, extraordinary teams are comprised of
Competitors.
Nope. Second component, extraordinary teams have a
Common.
perfect. Here we go. Third component, extraordinary teams communicate, communicate, communicate. Extraordinary teams communicate, communicate, communicate. Could you repeat that for me? Extraordinary teams do what?
Communicate,
Communicate,
communicate.
Yeah, you guys would suck as a choir, but I'll take it. I'll take it. So the best way for me to explain this idea is to tell you about my favorite movie of all times. I'm gonna pick on a couple people. Michael Noah, you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Michael, what do you think my favorite movie of all times is?
Huh.
Today, Junior.
Bambi.
What's that?
Bambi.
No, not your favorite movie. Anyone else? Anyone else? Connor Walsh. Want to take a guess?
I don't know your favorite movie. I know mine.
What's yours? What's yours?
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. Okay.
Yeah.
I could see. Rob, is Rob on the call? Where's Rob? I don't see Rob.
I'm here.
There you go.
I'm
Rob,
here.
what
Can you hear me?
I can. What do you think my favorite movie is?
I know the answer.
Shoot.
Remember the Titans.
Bingo. Remember the Titans. Do me a favor, raise your hand if you have not seen the movie Remember the Titans. Unacceptable. Unacceptable. No, seriously, homework assignment for the 6 people on the planet who have not seen that movie. You got to watch it. Yeah, and if you can't find it, it's on TNT every other night. And Connor, it just happens to be rotated between Remember the Titans and Forrest Gump. They just seem to rotate those 2 movies all the time. So Viola says, football movie. Viola, it is so much more than a football movie. So for those 6 people on the planet who have not seen the movie, let me set it up for you. Rob, stay with me. I got a question for you coming. So the movie is set in the late 1960s in the segregated South, a pretty divisive environment, okay? And there's 2 schools, one exclusively white and one exclusively black, and they have to integrate, okay? In the movie, yes, Viola is about the respective football teams from those schools, and they have to integrate, okay? But there's a scene, Rob, in that movie. I hope you remember it. Stay with me here. There are 2 buses and they're on their way to preseason camp. Do you remember that scene?
Yes,
You do?
I believe so.
Okay. Tell me what you think, what you remember, or what you think might happen. The team is on their way to preseason camp and the kids are loading the buses, right? Even if you didn't see the movie, you can kind of guess where this is going.
Yes, the white kids went on one bus and all the black kids got on the other bus.
Bingo. Pause right there. I've got a question for everyone. Who told them to get on separate buses? Critical question. This is an important question about teamwork and relationships.
I don't think anybody
did.
Nobody. That's
Nobody.
what they thought they should
The
do.
assumption.
Keep coming, keep coming. No one told them explicitly, but they were told.
Society.
Who said that?
Me, Eliana.
Where? I can't, there's too many people.
It's Eliana.
Eliano, I can't find you, but Eliana, in fact, could we all give Eliana a big round of applause, please? Eliana, I'm looking for you. I'm looking for you. We've got a few screens here. Well, let's do this because I don't want to waste time here. And instead of the word their society, can I use a different word? Their culture. You comfortable with that?
Sure.
They weren't told explicitly by the coach or the team mom to get on separate buses, but their society or their culture said, you guys belong over here and you guys belong over there. I need to pause to make a very important point about relationships here, ladies and gentlemen. Every team has a culture. Every team has a culture. Let me keep going. And every culture has some unwritten and unspoken rules that drive the behavior of that culture. And 99.9% of the time, those unwritten and unspoken rules are destructive and restrictive. They will keep our team from being as good as we can possibly be. Ladies and gentlemen, MMI has a culture, and there's some unwritten and unspoken rules. It's just the way we do things around here. It's the way we've done things around here. And I get it, but until we explore them, there may be some things that are keeping us from being as good as we can possibly be. Rob, stay with me. What did Coach Boone in the movie, what did Coach Boone say when he noticed that the team was behaving in a way that was divisive?
Well, he pulled them off the bus.
Yeah.
Talking specifically about the bus team.
Yeah. Okay. Hold on.
So,
Can I do my Denzel impersonation?
please.
Give me a second. Everybody off the bus. I want a white player seated with a black player, and this is going to be your roommate for the duration of camp. How was that?
That's
No
good.
love. No love. That was
Good.
pretty darn good.
You're missing
In fact,
your
the next
call.
time
You're
you guys
missing
watch the movie, you're going to say Rubin nailed it.
You're missing your call. You're missing your calling, Lee.
What's that, Gene?
You're missing your calling.
Yeah, maybe soon I'll transition one more time. But here's the point. Coach, he recognizes that there's something at play that is dividing them in their culture. Yeah, maybe our recruiters, those who handle the talent, aren't really connecting well with those who are managing the relationships. Something may be divisive. He saw it, he recognized it, and he addressed it. And the way he forced them to change the culture was by forcing them to communicate. Ladies and gentlemen, there's only one way we're going to get better at what we do as an organization. It is bigger than the exchange of information. This is about relationships. You know, Rob and I were talking, the reason we're still connected after having gone to the same high school, the same college, we didn't really know each other then, but we got connected because of his persistence and him driving our communication, just communicating. Let me show you why that's important. I wish I were on stage because I want to take three different positions here, right? So I'll have to do it with my hands. Please stay with me. Open and honest communication. Open and honest communication. One more time for emphasis. Open and
Honest.
communication is the only way. Here's the second step. We will get to trust. Trust. We underestimate the value of trust in our professional relationships. Because here's what I've learned from step 2 to step 3. Where there is no trust, there is no team. I don't care how many talented individuals we've collected. Where there is no trust, there is no team. Let me be clear. We could be functioning at a higher level. It's not because of a lack of talent. We've got some very talented individuals, but I would suggest that's because we're not as where we should be as it relates to trust. Because here's why. I mean, it's human nature. It's basic. I will not go all out for people I don't trust. I will not extend myself for people I don't trust. I will not give 110% in an environment and in a culture where I don't trust everyone. And the only way to get to trust is through open and
Honest communication.
Professional and respectful, but we've got to have the conversations that allow us to get past our differences, our superficial differences, in order to achieve our common goal. I wish I had more time to spend here. Maybe we'll do more in the Q&A, but I've got to move on. But I do want to recommend a book before I move on. The title of the book is The Speed of Trust. The Speed of Trust, written by a gentleman named Stephen Covey, C-O-V-E-Y. You've probably heard that name before. His father, also named Stephen Covey, wrote the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Now, hopefully you're all readers, but if you're not, let me summarize the book for you really quickly. It's very simple. Relationships slow down and are less productive when the members of the team don't trust each other. It's that simple. Whether it's business, sports, families, faith, the relationships aren't as well functioning when the members of the team don't trust each other. And the only way we'll get to that trust is through open and honest communication. Yeah, going out of our way to know our teammates. Again, from an athletic perspective, it's amazing. It's amazing how much the impact of the relationships off the field impacted how we played on the field. Yeah, when you know someone and you know where they're coming from and you know what drives them and you know what's important to them and you avoid the buttons that they have that we can inadvertently push, when you know those things through open and honest communication, yeah, then trust is built. And when we can function in a culture of inclusion and trust, man, it allows us to go full speed. It allows us to go 110%. Maybe we'll get some questions on that later, but that's really important. All right, 5 components. They all start with the letter
C.
C. First one. Connor's the only one with me. I need to hear more voices. I need to hear some bass voices. Come on. 5 components. They all start with the letter
C.
Come on. Extraordinary teams are comprised of
Competitors.
No, who said that? It's competitors. That's fine. The first one, competitor. Second component, extraordinary teams have a
Common
goal.
goal.
extraordinary teams do what?
Communicate.
Communicate.
Here we go. Here's the 4th one. This may be the most important. I'm not sure. They're all pretty important, but extraordinary teams have this thing called chemistry. Extraordinary teams have this thing called chemistry. Could you repeat that for me? Extraordinary teams have this thing called
Chemistry.
Do you guys remember chemistry in high school?
I didn't do too well.
With the goggles and the Bunsen burners and the periodic table of elements, right? Am I bringing back bad memories for any of you?
Yes.
Baking soda.
So when I talk about chemistry as it relates to teams and relationships, intuitively, I know what that means, right? We work well together. We can anticipate each other's moves. We're connected in a sense, right? So to make sure I was fundamentally sound on this idea, I went back to my science teacher in high school and I asked her about chemistry. What's chemistry about? And she said, Lee, chemistry is about bonds. Chemistry is about bonds. Yes, we study and we know the properties of the individual elements, but ultimately what we're trying to figure out is how well those elements bond, right? And there's 2 types of bonds. There's ionic bonds and covalent bonds, the exchange or the sharing of electrons. Even more information than you probably wanted to hear again right now. But here's what she said that blew me away. I need you to hear this. She said, Lee, most bonds are formed under heat and pressure. There's the message. There's the point. Most bonds are formed under heat and pressure, through difficulty, through adversity, through discomfort. Yes, the same stuff that tear most teams
What happens
apart
after the test?
is the same exact stuff that bring extraordinary teams together. The difference is how we respond to that heat and pressure. Yeah, there's 2 choices all of us have to make when we're faced with difficult situations. We can either, if we're immature, point fingers and play the blame game and throw our teammates under the proverbial bus, or we can make a mature decision and leverage that adversity, leverage that difficulty, leverage that uncertainty to actually come together and develop those bonds. Yeah, you've heard this 1,000 times, right? Life is 10%, the small slither of what happens to you, but 90% of how you respond. Let me try that again in the context of our conversation. Life is 10% of heat and pressure, but 90% of how we respond. How we respond is everything. There are certain things that are completely out of our control. I was reading some stuff that was printed about Gene, and I saw one quote he likes: "Don't fear failure." Right? You got to learn from it and move ahead. How you respond to things, especially those things outside of our control, is everything. Mature individuals know, they understand that when things get tough, they don't just get going, they come together. They reach out to their teammates, because the reason you're a part of a team in the first place is because the team can do something that you can't do by yourself. Now is not the time to be selfish. Now is not the time to be self-protective and only worry about making sure you cover your own tooth. No, now is the time to reach out to your teammates and say, as a mature individual, let's get this done together. That's how those bonds are formed. Maybe this word picture will help you. Let's see, who do I have? Steve Ryerson, I see you here. Steve, what does a welder do? And don't say welds. Don't answer it that way. What does a welder do?
Puts pieces of metal and iron together.
Exactly, perfect. In fact, let's give Steve some love. Big round of applause for Steve. Yeah, they take heavy metals. Stay with me, Steve. They take heavy metals and they bond them, or they fuse them together. Quick question. Why would you take heavy metals and put them together, Steve?
To build something better?
Yeah, they're
bigger,
stronger,
better,
right? They're
stronger
together than they would be by themselves.
Correct.
So I'm curious, Steve, what does the welder use to put those things together?
Usually a torch or soldering iron or something like that.
Heat.
Yeah, heat. Yep.
And some type of vise or clamp to hold it together until it solidifies. Pressure.
Right.
Heat and pressure. One more question, Steve. What would happen? They said, screw it. The welder says, screw it. Let's just duct tape this thing together like some of you guys do in the garage, right? Like screw the heat and pressure.
Yeah, that's what I would do.
All that. Let's take the easy route and just duct tape this thing.
Yeah, it wouldn't stay together.
At some point,
it would break.
At some point, the whole thing would collapse. Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you see that silly little example. It's heat and pressure. That's the only way we're going to build the type of strong, enduring bonds that help our relationships last, right? It's about what we do in tough times. It's about reaching out to each other, our teammates in tough times. It's about reaching out to our clients and adding value during tough times. Listen, this is going to be over at some point, all this craziness, and our clients are going to remember who was there for them when things sucked. They're going to remember who added value, who was by their side, who was in their corner, who was there with them when things were tough, right? It's because we reached out and we let them know we're in this with you. That's how that chemistry is developed, okay? I've said this on different occasions. Maybe this will make some sense. The only way to identify a fair weather friend, the only way to find out who your fair weather friends are, is foul weather. It's foul weather. That's when you find out who's really there. That's when you find out who's really got your back. When things get tough, when there's adversity, when there's heat and pressure, that's who we find out who's really with us. And so now is the time as an organization to make sure we're connected with each other and that our clients know that we are there for them. Does that make sense? That's where that chemistry is built. Awesome. We're almost done. 5 components. They all start with the letter
Hey.
First one, extraordinary teams are comprised of
Competitors.
Extraordinary teams have a
Come and go.
component. Extraordinary teams do what?
Communication.
Some people said it like 8 times. 4th component, extraordinary teams have this thing called
Chemistry.
5th, last component, extraordinary teams are consistent. Extraordinary teams are consistent. Could you repeat that for me? Extraordinary teams are
Consistent.
I don't need you to be phenomenal periodically, right? I don't need you to be phenomenal periodically. Had a great month back in October. Doesn't help me now, right? Had a great year back in 2019. Doesn't help me now. Yeah, I'm more concerned about you being consistent than I am about you being phenomenal periodically. So let's just cut to it because we're running out of time here. How does a team, how does an individual build that machine-like consistency? How is consistency developed? How does an athlete become consistent? How does a musician become consistent?
Practice.
If I were in Philly, I'd do my Allen Iverson impersonation. Practice? We're talking about practice? That's it. That's the answer. Let me wrap up with this quote by Aristotle, and this hopefully will resonate. Aristotle, the Greek philosopher, said, "We are what we repeatedly do. We are, or we become, we are what we repeatedly do. We are what we repeatedly do." The rest of that quote, excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Excellence doesn't just happen periodically. It's a habit because we are what we repeatedly do. Here's my suggestion as I wrap up this part of our conversation. Find those things, those 5 things that make us uniquely us and add value to our clients, and practice those things to the point of excellence, right? I've learned from being around and a part of some great teams, if we keep things simple, if we mind the basics and we practice them to the point of excellence, we're going to be tough to beat. It's not about being all over the place and trying all this crazy stuff. No, it's about managing and mastering the basics and building a machine-like consistency, because as Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. All right, cool. So let's see, before we go into Q&A, if you guys remember all 5 C's without looking at your notes, okay? Don't look. Nobody's allowed to look down. Look straight at me. Look straight at that green light on your laptop. Yeah. You got some pretty-eyed people here. Here we go. 5 components of extraordinary teams. They all start with the letter
E.
E.
First one, extraordinary teams are comprised of
Competitors.
Second component, extraordinary teams have a
Goal. Common goal.
common goal. Third component, extraordinary teams do what?
Communicate.
Fourth component, extraordinary teams have this thing called
Chemistry.
and fifth and last, extraordinary teams are
Consistent.
Thank you guys for your time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. So we do have some time, a few minutes for some questions. I'd love you guys to pick my brain, to ask me for clarity, maybe even challenge me on something that you didn't agree with. Open it up for questions.
Lee, I have a question. This is Jeff.
Hey, Jeff, how are you, sir?
All right, man. You mentioned that teams winning. You said winning is a team needs or meets. It either exceeds or meets what they are capable of.
Yep.
My question to you is, who makes that decision? Is it the whole team that sits in a room and says, this is what we're capable of? Is it the leader of the team? Who makes that decision?
Without sounding like a politician, Jeff, I think the answer is both. I think so. I think leaders have the unique responsibility of setting the bar as high as possible, right? For the team, right? I'm a big John Maxwell fan. He's a leadership guru. And he talks about being the leader being the lid, right? That the team can only go as high as their lid. And the leader has a responsibility of setting the bar nice and high and actually being aspirational, maybe even higher than the team thinks they can go. So yes, a lot of responsibility is on the leader. The reason I say both is I've been around some teams where there were some teammates, some team members who weren't necessarily in a leadership position, who spent more time around their fellow teammates, who felt like they could actually do more than what the leader suggested they could do. And you don't want to be in that situation, but that does happen where the team says, no, you know what, we actually can do a bit more than that. And hopefully you've got a great leader who's willing to listen. Now, when I talked about communicate, a huge part of that is listen. Yeah, a great leader hires good people, hires great people, and allows them to do their thing. You don't just bring great people on and smother them. You want to bring great people on your team and allow them to be their best selves. So you want to be able to listen to your team. If the team says, you know what, I think we've got more in us, coach, we've got more in us, boss, then I think the leader makes the necessary adjustments. Jeff, you gave me an opportunity to share a great quote with you that is, I think, is relevant here. Leaders who don't listen are soon surrounded by people who have nothing to say. Leaders who don't listen to the perspectives, who don't listen to the aspirations of their team members are soon surrounded by people who have nothing to say. They start asking questions or start putting information out there, and the team says, whatever you say, boss, because they don't feel like they're heard, appreciated, and valued. So while I do put a lot of that on the leader, I do believe that team members can push that limit if necessary.
Thanks, Lee.
Long answer, but hopefully that made some sense.
Sure does.
Let me say this, and not just because Gene is here, but we had a conversation, and the fact that we're doing this and everyone is on the call is a sign of really positive, really strong leadership, right? Gene didn't say, well, let me just get my top 5 guys, top 10 guys and do this call. He said, I want everybody on the call because I want us all hearing the same thing. And everybody here's got a voice. Everybody here's got value. So I've been around a lot of teams, a lot of leaders, and not everyone would do it this way. So I applaud Gene publicly. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Hey, Lee, how do you find people with passion and grit? I mean,
that's a great question, Gene. So here's what's unique about my experience is I was actually in some of your shoes. I was on the corporate side. So it's funny. When I read resumes, and back then in the dark ages, they were actually paper resumes. We did have systems where we read resumes online. But when I read resumes, I started from the bottom of the resume because I'm not sure how people are doing resumes, but if they're still doing it now, the way they used to do it, their interests and hobbies were on the bottom. I want to know what makes you tick. Okay, with all things being equal, right? We've all got great academic backgrounds. We've got great work experience. I want to know what drives you. What makes you tick? What are you passionate about? And as a recruiter, or as a, if we pass them along to the future employer, if what drives them and what's important to them does not connect to what's important to the organization, we have what we call a bad fit, right? It's just not going to work. Like, you may not love the widgets that the corporation makes, but you got to love something. You got to be passionate about what you do. And I could care less about all the places you've been and all your roles and responsibilities. What I want to know is what drives you. Is it your family? Is it notoriety? Is it wealth? Is it promotions? Is it like, I need to know what you, because Gene, everyone is passionate about something. Everyone is, they may not articulate it, they may not show it, but there's something that matters to everyone. And I think our job in the screening process is to figure out what that thing is. I talked to a lot of coaches, college coaches who are recruiting high school players. And the baseline is they're all very talented. Everyone is very talented. You can find talented athletes. You can walk down the street and trip over them. But what drives you? What drives you? The other thing, Gene, and again, in doing my homework, I saw some of the core values and the core beliefs that drive your organization. I would hope to hear some of the things in a candidate that are consistent with the values and the core principles of the organizations that we're trying to place them in. But everyone's got something that they're passionate about, finding out what it is and digging and getting past the polished interview, I think, is the key to great recruiting.
Hey, Lee, I got a quick question. Nicholas here.
Hey, Nicholas.
The first seed competitors. So in the context of maybe a sport where you have a bench, right? You have competition against another team, but you also have competition within the team to be a starter. In my experience in the corporate world, there's not really a bench. The bench is out, right? So as we build chemistry, as we build a family in the team, what do you think is the role of internal competition?
Well, Nicholas, I would actually disagree with you. I think, at least when I was doing recruiting, there were other recruiters that I worked with, and I did know how many recs they had. I didn't know what kind of people they were filling those jobs in, and I do want to be clear, because this gets a little tricky. I'm not competing against them. Again, back to my definition, for me, competing or winning is we are challenging each other to be our absolute best. I'm not trying to beat you, Nicholas, because I'll flip it so I don't offend you. I may suck, right? Like you're capable of doing what you're capable of doing. You may leverage me as a benchmark to see what's possible. And that what I call constructive peer pressure, right, can drive you to be better than you might have been. But at some point, you're going to have to answer for yourself. How good can I be? How productive can I be? And often, again, in teams, everyone on this role is not in a producing role, right? There's some people who are in operational roles or administrative roles or financial roles where they're not necessarily producing, but they're a part of they're part of the glue and they're a part of the process. How do they measure themselves against others? Their job is to measure themselves against their potential and what they're capable of doing. So I think you've got to look in the mirror every night and say, you know what, did I give my best to this organization, to this team every single day? Yeah, you can kind of gauge what other people are doing. But even in sports, like playing against other guys that were on my team, we pushed ourselves to be our best. It wasn't about me beating them or them beating me. It was, can we put as a team our best team on the field?
Thank you, Lee.
Yep, hopefully that made some sense.
Who else? We got time for one or two more questions. Anybody? I've got one. Anybody else before I ask my question? This is your time, guys.
I want to talk about consistency for a minute, if you don't
Marie.
mind. Hi. So, in sales, it's all metrics driven and you are as good as you are today. However, there should be, you said something earlier that if you were great in October and you're not doing so well now, it's like good for you in October, right?
Right.
But I think as a leader and having been through a lot of these, and I'm a junkie for all of these types of sessions, leadership sessions, I feel that in sales and particularly recruitment as well, there has to be consistency and effort. But sometimes that effort and those metrics, you have a bad month or two,
Agree 100%, Marie. So here's what I believe in wholeheartedly 100%. If you consistently do the right things, you'll get the results, right? The results, the fruit of those efforts may not show consistently every month the same way, but we've got to engage in the right behavior. And so as leaders, what we're looking at is activity, we're looking at behavior, not necessarily outcomes, right? So I had a chance to speak at the University of Alabama football, their football team. And okay, Connor, I see you, but the timing didn't work out, so I didn't make it down. But they had already prepped me, and they said, Nick Saban, one of the greatest college coaches of our day, he does not allow you to talk about winning and losing to his team. His idea, his philosophy is the process, the process, the process. If you're engaging in the proper behaviors, winning will take care of itself.
Agreed.
And so I agree 100%. I just kind of did that to be silly, right? I had a great month in October. It's measuring ourselves by our results and not by our behaviors and our activities. I think we ought to measure ourselves by our behaviors, the process.
Agreed. Thank you.
Thanhave you.
Who else? Anybody?
Okay, Gene, I think you're saving a tough one for last here.
Well, I will. So we have an amazing opportunity. We're in the right business, and we got to take advantage of this. And we've decided we're really going to try to really work. And people like Dawn and Jess have really worked hard building a leadership program at Mitchell Martin. What would you say to all the new leaders out there? We have a lot of people that were in sales or recruiting that are new leaders, and they're developing their skill sets to be leaders, to build great teams of people. What advice would you give them? And I'd like everybody at Mitchell Martin to be a leader. Again, just like you said, we have important leaders in accounting and finance and operations and HR and marketing, and they're all leaders, and they all are participating in the success of this company.
Yeah.
As you said, as a team, we could not survive without them. And although salespeople and recruiters bring in the revenue and the GP, we need to work as a team or we'd never succeed. But I'm a little, I don't know what the right word is. It's important for leaders, new leaders, to really develop their skills and to understand what does it take to build a great team. And
great question. Great question. Let me try to answer it as simply as I can. So for me, I mentioned John Maxwell earlier. John Maxwell defines leadership as influence, right? Those people who have influence are leaders. Sadly, you can have positive influence and you could have negative influence. There's in big organizations, you've got people at the coffee pot or at the water cooler who are negatively influencing their team. So understanding you don't have to be in a leadership role to have influence, right? So don't wait till you're promoted into a leadership position to start behaving with influence now. Now, what I've learned in being around great leaders across all industries is the best leaders are great listeners. They're great listeners. Too often when we talk about being a leader and being a great communicator, most people think that you're really good at articulating, right? You're good at casting a vision. You're good at keeping people all on the same page. But what I've learned is great leaders are great listeners. They understand what's important to their team members, and they have the unique ability to connect what's important to the individuals to the achievement of our greater purpose. If you can't do that, what are you really doing? If you can't help people and guide people and direct people to benefiting you as an individual and having what you do achieve the corporations or the organizations or the team's higher purpose, then are you really a leader? And so I think the model of leadership has been, let's go this way and follow me, as opposed to actually the leader serving the team and helping the team and pouring into the team so that the team grows to a place where we continue to not only achieve our purpose, but continue to pursue things that we never thought we could in the first place. So Gene, I just think, especially in this environment, we just got through a political, an election year. We've got social unrest. We've got our communication skills being challenged by a remote operating environment. Like, there's so many reasons that have disrupted the way we normally do business. The most important thing is to make sure we know what's on the hearts and minds of our team members. And so I know it's a broad answer, but I think the one skill that will help all of our leaders in terms of influence is being better listeners and forcing our team members nicely, obviously, to communicate. When we don't have that trust, we just don't have a team. So I'll say this, and you guys have seen this, in your business all the time, right? When you talk about people leaving roles and leaving organizations and doing those exit interviews, I did quite a few of those, and people lie. People say that they're leaving for a better opportunity or they got more money, but typically people leave because they didn't feel valued, appreciated, and heard. People leave because they didn't feel like their leader, their manager, their organization didn't value them, didn't appreciate them, didn't hear them. And so if that's the case, being better listeners and making our team feel like they're a part of something bigger than ourselves, I think is critical, both internally and through the people that we recruit.
Great. No, thank you. Anyone, one last question, then we're done. Anybody, if anyone has a question? If not, Lee, I want to
forever hold your peace.
No, I thank you. I think, motivation, it's really, as salespeople or business people, recruiters, we all need to be internally motivated. You're right. Find your passion and work as a team. Right? We've read, I'm sure you are familiar with Leccioni.
Yes.
The 5 dysfunctions.
The 5 dysfunctions of a team. Yep.
And it all starts with trust. If you can trust people, you can have conflict. And if you have conflict, you can have resolution. If you don't trust your team members, then you'll never have conflict or resolution. So it's all about the team. It's only about the team.
Yeah, yeah.
Why are some?
If not all 163 of us would just hang our own shingles and do it by ourselves, and that's not the case. We can do more. The whole is greater than the sum of our parts if we learn how to function together. There's some things that we can accomplish as a team that we just never could by ourselves. So I will say this: I'd love to connect with any of you guys or all of you guys on LinkedIn. I'm there. I try to post something constructive. Typically, it's very team oriented. I try to post something every day. Would love to stay connected. And if you have questions beyond today, we can connect that way.
All right, we appreciate. Let's give Lee a little round of applause. Thank you, Lee.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks, Lee.
Bravo.
Thank you, Lee.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Oh, bravo.